Hey everybody, I'm back. I had intended to do these videos yesterday, but I got sidetracked with dinner and cleaning and hanging around with the husband and watching TV. And then I got tired and then I went to bed. So I figured I would pick up where I left off. This first video, I want to try to do 3 today. This first video, I feel like I got a lot to share today. This first video is talking about my fragrance collection. And it's not going to be a show and tell, not this video. This video, I'm going to talk about what I collect, how I collect it, how I got started collecting, so on and so forth. So I'm just going to be talking about my love of fragrance and that it's been a near lifelong thing. So I collect fragrances. Hoard, collect, acquire, surround myself with, the fragrances. I'm a fragrance enthusiast, and I specialize in vintage fragrances, specifically late 70s through early 90s to mid 90s. Although I do have some older and I do have some newer. And then to break that down even farther, I subspecialize in collecting parfums. The little pretty small bottles with the stoppers. They're usually crystal and more ornate and decorative, and the highest concentration of the fragrance inside. That's my little, that's my little specialty for collecting. But I've only really gotten into that within the past year or a little bit longer. And before that, fragrance, though, was part of my life going back to childhood. So it all started. It all started when I was like 10 years old in the 5th grade. So 1979-80. My mom always bought her makeup at the Estee Lauder counter at the department store. Back then it was Foley's, which then got bought by Macy's. So that type of a department store. And not only did she, just go there to stock up on her makeup, she also liked to buy clothes and shoes and so on and so forth there. But one of the ladies that worked at the Estee Lauder counter was a friend of hers. So she would time it to go like twice a month at least, if not every week. She would try to get out there every week on a Saturday afternoon when my dad was puttering around doing something, or having to work to get something done by a deadline where everybody had to work Saturdays. She would grab me and say, we're going to the mall. And that way, not only she had a chance to have a nice little gossip session with her friend. And usually, even though she didn't need anything, there was always something new to try. Is there a new product? Oh, let me try a new color of lipstick. Let me smell this. Let me do this. What's coming out for the holidays? Are there any gifts with purchase? And man, they could drag that out for an hour. So she would be going about her Estee Lauder counter business while having a nice little gossip session with her friend. And I was expected to be quiet, be unobtrusive, and be good. And, I didn't have to stand there right next to her, thank goodness, because if I would have had to have just stood there for an hour listening to my mom gab and gossip with the Estee Lauder lady, I would have gone bug nuts. But I was allowed to walk around on my own and amuse myself as long as I was quiet and unobtrusive and good. So, but I couldn't go that far. I still wasn't old enough to go out in the mall on my own, or like upstairs in the department store or whatnot. I could go in that general area, basically within sight line. So makeup, fragrances, fine jewelry, costume jewelry, shoes, handbags, accessories. That was my little domain of wandering while my mom had her little chit-chat sessions and makeup try-ons with her friend. So I wasn't interested in makeup at all. Fine jewelry? No. Shoes? Never really been much of a shoe. I've been mostly meh on shoes. Purses? Mostly meh on purses. Costume jewelry was kind of neat. I would spend some time looking through the costume jewelry, and back then hats and shawls and stuff like that were all a big deal, so I would always have something cool to look at. But for the most part, what drew me like a moth to a flame was the fragrance showcases. And I would be wandering around just quietly, unobtrusively looking and not touching. And I would notice in the cases, the little jewel in the crown, the little center of the display was always the parfum. The little, little small decorative, pretty little bottles. They were always either in pretty presentation boxes or they were on like little velvet pedestals with little spotlights on them. And I knew, these little objects with their precious fluid inside were luxurious, special, and completely unattainable, because I was a kid. I did have pocket money from allowance and like doing little odd jobs now and then, like mowing the lawn, but even back then, the smallest bottles, the quarter ounces, were still like $75, and that was completely unattainable. And the ladies who worked at the fragrance counters just seemed like the epitome of glamour to me at the time. They all had their makeup done and their hair done and their nails done, and they had pretty clothes, and there were these, beautiful women who were the keepers of these beautiful little bottles. And I was at such an impressionable age, it just sucked me in and locked in somewhere in my psyche. So that was my thing. And my mom was always a one fragrance woman. It was Coty Emerald, and that was it. From the time I was a small child until the time she reached the end of her life and her health started to fail, the only fragrance she wore was Coty Emerald. She would have a bottle of something else now and then, but 98% of the time it was Coty Emerald. That was all she wore. And her dresser in my parents' bedroom had her little display of her Emerald products on a little mirrored tray, and she might have one or two other bottles in the back. But she was all about Emerald. So whenever she would get samples, whenever she would get like a mini, whenever she would get a little spray that was a gift with purchase, she had no interest in it, so she'd just give it to me. And every once in a while, with my little perusing around, I would be given a little vial by one of the salespersons. And that was my little collection. I kept it in a little decorative box, and I had my little hoard of perfume even when I was 10 years old. And I remember the one I wanted more than all others was Opium. And that was the most age-inappropriate one that could be. But that was the one I wanted more than anything. And when I would be doing my little wanderings and drooling over the bottles, if no one was looking, I would sneak a spray of Opium. But I was really careful about it and really sneaky and really down low about it because I didn't want to get caught, because they might ban me from the perfume counters, and I did not want that. But whenever I would score a little vial of Opium, that was like my precious, So that was the one above all others. So about that time in my life, 10 years old, 5th grade, first real fragrance I was given was a small bottle of Chloe, the original Karl Lagerfeld Chloe, and the peach and white boxes with the parfum was in that pretty little round bottle with the clear bottle with the frosted calla lily stopper. And the whole thing was the calla lily, and it was considered feminine and soft and innocent. And now it's a hard-hitting, heavy fragrance, but back then it was considered something that would be appropriate for a younger girl. And a friend of the family gave me a small bottle of the Eau de Toilette, and that was my first real fragrance. And then after that, my mom got me a small bottle of the Eau de Toilette of the Oscar de la Renta, the original Oscar, which again now is a heavy hitter. Back then it was considered light floral, appropriate for a girl. And of course I was given Anais. That was like the starter fragrance for girls of my generation. The first fragrance I bought with my own money, birthday money, money I saved up my allowance, money I saved from mowing the lawn and washing the car. The first fragrance I ever bought myself was opium. And I was in like the 7th grade and wearing opium. I got the smallest bottle of the Eau de Toilette, the cheapest absolute one. Actually, I think I got it at Christmas, so there was a little lotion that came with it, but it was, and then like a little mini, but it was the absolute cheapest one I could get. And that was my first perfume purchase, fragrance purchase, was the opium. And then after that, I never really, spent much money of my own on fragrances. Christmas, birthdays, usually Christmas, one of the aunts would give me a bottle of something. But other than that, I didn't really spend my own money on it in my teenage years. When I started working in part-time and so on, I didn't really have the money to spend on fragrances. I was spending the money on going out. I was spending the money on movie tickets, concert tickets, restaurants, gas for the car, clothes, makeup, shoes. Fragrance kind of fell by the wayside, so that was usually something that I was given as gifts. The one that I did get into, I got a tear strip of Poison in a Vogue magazine the year Poison came out, and I made that happen. Then the next, the first parfum I bought myself was a little refillable, it was a little metal tube that you got the little vials to replace, and it was the Poison, and I had to go all the way across town to Neiman Marcus to get it because that was the only place in my city to get it. And other than that, though, I really wasn't much into it until the 90s. 89, my collecting got a little bit of a boost. My freshman year in college, for like 8 months, I dated a guy from a well-to-do family in another city. And when I say a well-to-do family, both his parents were, I want to say one of his parents, both of them were surgeons possibly. They were both physicians, that's for sure. And he and his siblings grew up with nannies and drivers and maids and cooks and things like that. And he lived in a very, very, very upscale neighborhood in the city he was from. And I could do a whole vlog talking about him. And he was very sweet. I really enjoyed dating him. But he was so sheltered, just basic things like basic adulting skills. The guy didn't even know how to do laundry. He'd never had to do laundry in his life. And things, he just couldn't, he didn't drive, there was always someone to do these basic things for him. But anyway, that's off on a tangent. So he really liked cologne. And one of the things he liked to do, he wasn't very adventurous, like to go out and explore or go very far. Like, he wouldn't want to go to the beach. He wouldn't want to go like to clubs. He wouldn't want to go to concerts, anything like that. We would go to like orchestra concerts and things like that on campus. But really the only thing he liked to do was go to the mall and shop, go to the movies, and go out to eat. There was a really fancy park behind one of the malls with a beautiful waterfall kind of feature, and he'd like to go walk around out there, but there were like, you could take horse carriage rides. He liked those kind of things, which it was nice to do, but, again, going completely off on a tangent. The point of that being is that he really liked cologne, so once a week we would go to the mall, and he would buy himself a new cologne. And he would usually buy me a new cologne too. And we would walk around the department stores in the mall. And this was the mall with the Neiman Marcus. This was the mall with, the upscale department stores and so on and so forth. And he would buy himself a cologne. And he would usually buy me a cologne. And that boosted my collection quite a bit. So all of my really, really nice fragrances in 89, 90 came from that. And then after that, he moved back to the city he was from. He just realized that he just was not ready to live on his own, even in the dorms. So he moved back and commuted to school. So there went my my cologne hookup. So oh well, easy come, easy go. And then after that, I just didn't have the money to spend on designer fragrances and such on my own. So, I just didn't have it. I was buying, I was paying rent. I was, buying gas. I was buying food. Because I got my own apartment, and I lived in my own apartment until I met my husband. And so for like 10 years, I had my own apartment. I had a little tiny apartment, so I just didn't have money to collect fragrances. So I had what I had. And then same thing after I got married, it wasn't the priority at the time. There were other priorities. Although I would get a bottle of this here and a bottle of that there, but as far as, collecting, it just wasn't a priority. It hasn't been, the past few years I've started collecting. And I got started. Sorry, I'm snorking. That is so rude and gross. But we're under another air quality alert where I live today. And it is just, oh my God, go outside and it smells like burning wires. I'll be so glad when we move. Because, people here you got I'm going to go on another tangent. You got two groups of people here. Half them say, it's the plants, the refineries and the chemical plants. Half of them, it has nothing to do with that. It just depends on where your living comes from. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the plants, because we don't deal with this when we're not home. So I will be glad when we're gone. So anyway, within the past year and a half to 2 years, I've started really collecting. Mostly really picked up in the past year. And I've always been told perfumes expire, perfumes go bad, you can't keep fragrances. Well, I never really noticed that with the ones, I'd have the bottles and I'd have them for years and they'd be fine. But I never really thought about going out specifically looking for old bottles, used bottles, what they call dead stock. Stuff that's still in its packaging and sealed but never got sold. Say a store went out of business or whatnot. I never really thought about collecting that. But one day I was browsing on Etsy, and I don't even remember what I was browsing for, but I came across a little bottle of the Lagerfeld Chloe Parfum, with the little crystal stopper. It was a 1/4 ounce bottle for $12 and free shipping. And that was one of the ones that I would always see when I was a little girl, and it was completely unattainable to me then. And this bottle was maybe 2/3 full, and it was $12. And I thought, my gosh, that's like the cost of a movie ticket. So I thought, I can, even if it doesn't smell good, I can have the little bottle. And I can do something crafty with a little bottle. So I ordered it. And it came. And I opened it. And just, to see, I dabbed it on. And it smelled like I remembered. And it smelled fine. There was nothing wrong with it. So I realized you can buy these old fragrances and they're still good. So I started looking into it and finding forums and communities and such online. And yeah, it's a thing. You can buy vintage fragrances and wear them and they're still good. A lot of them are. One of my rules is never spend what you can't afford to lose. It's like gambling. If you get it and it's gone bad, well, you bought your ticket, you took your chance. But if it comes and it's still good, you got to treasure. I try not to spend more than $20 on any given bottle. Most of the time I go for the parfums, although a lot of the time I'll go for the eau de parfum sprays and occasionally the splashes if it's in a pretty bottle. But I found that the parfums and the eau de parfums tend to hold their scent a little better than the eau de toilettes and the eau de colognes and the colognes, because I guess the concentration of the fragrance oils is stronger in the parfums and the extraits. And then you get like your parfum de toilette, and you get like your esprit de parfum, and then you get your eau de parfum, and you get your eau de toilette and your eau de cologne, and then you get like your splashes and sprays and whatnot, you know, body sprays and whatnot. But it seems to me like the higher the concentration, the better they hold up. And also the vintage fragrances, especially the ones, the heavier fragrances like the Orientals, the Florientals, the Chypres, those tend to me to hold up more, I guess because they have more substantial ingredients, more substantial notes. A lot of times I found the top notes of the fragrance may have faded to where you can barely smell them, or when you apply it, you smell them and they're very fleeting. They're gone in seconds. That's not a problem for me usually. That's, you know, a lot of fragrances are designed that the very top notes are very fleeting, and when you apply it, you get this little burst of fragrance and you smell these top notes that then just diffuse away. And if they're gone or weakened, I don't really care. It doesn't affect how much I enjoy it. So I've built a pretty good little bit of a collection. All the ones that I lusted over as a little girl, I've acquired. I've got my Chloe, I've got my Oscar de la Renta, I've got my Shalimar. And, you know, if it was a fragrance I liked back in the day, if it came in parfum, I have most of them. There's some that I'm still hunting at prices I can afford. Some of them are very collectible. Like the Shalimar, it wasn't even one of the super old ones. It was a bottle from like 81. And that was like... That was like a royal flush coming across that one for what I paid for it, because you really can't find vintage Shalimar parfum for a low price. Same thing with Samsara. That was like a ridiculously lucky find when I found that. So there's some I'm still hunting. But for the most part, the ones I really wanted, I found, like Obsession, Diva. You know, some of them, they're really not popular and I've been able to get multiples of. Some of them are harder to find than others. So it's just, I get what I can get when I come across it at a price I can find. And right now they're all packed up, waiting to move. And after I move, I'll find a way to display them. But the, my latest little acquisition I'm going to show off is one of my favorite, and I'm going to do a review and talk about this fragrance in another little video. But it is Emmanuel Ungaro's Diva, and this is the parfum, and this is a 1/2 ounce bottle, and it's still in its original presentation box, and it's still like, gosh, it's still like 2/3 full. And when I open the box, I can smell it, and it's, oh, I love this one. And the bottle is in beautiful condition. It still has its original, I guess these are like red velvet and gold cording. It's a little bit damaged on the back where the cording is starting to fray, but I'm going to just put a little dot of glue and glue that back in. It still has its little foil label intact. It, you know, it's in good condition. The fragrance itself still smells true. And this is one of my all-time favorites. This is my third parfum of this one. This is the 1/2 ounce, I have a 1/4 ounce, and I have an ounce. So I have my little family of Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Baby Bear of this one. And this particular one, I lucked out and got it in the display box, and I paid less than $20 for it. So, I mean, you know, they're there and they're accessible. I just happened to luck out that the fragrance inside was still good. I'm not going to put any on right now because I'm going to talk about this fragrance, but a spray of it. Vintage versus current. Now this one is still in production. Okay, you can get this. I want to say Kohl's has it. I've seen it at places like Marshall's before. One thing about fragrances, the formulations change over the years, and especially decades in cases like these. A lot of the ingredients become unavailable either through regulations in the industry or because of cost to source the materials. It's just you can't get certain quality of ingredients or certain ingredients in general. So they have to reformulate, they have to replace naturals with synthetics, even some synthetics with other synthetics. And they have to try to stay as true to the original as they can. And then also sometimes they tweak them for evolving tastes and preferences. Like this is a floral chypre, which a chypre fragrance, I think cypress, the word cypress, chypre cypress. They're the ones that have a really sharp oak moss, kind of a really, almost a little bit of a forest floor funk to it. It's oak moss and there's a specific blend of notes that make a chypre. And it's almost pungent. It's got the oak moss. It's mossy. It's woodsy. It's herbaceous. It's earthy in that kind of sharp kind of a way, not like a bright grassy, fresh. It's more of a deep in the heart of the forest kind of a thing. When you think of a chypre fragrance like Clinique Aromatics Elixir, Diva, Magie Noir, Ivory de Balmain, Halston, Coriandre. There's others, and they were mostly popular back in the day. It's not a popular fragrance genre now, but especially for women, but I love it. So I do like this one. Anyway, that's about that. That's like how I got started as a kid, killing time while my mom had a gab session. I would walk around and I was drawn like a moth to a flame to all these pretty little bottles. And now at this stage of my life, they are completely attainable. So I have been collecting them and gathering them and hoarding them and loving them and appreciating them and wearing them. I wear all my vintage fragrances I wear. And there's some people that collect only for the bottles or just to collect, unopened bottles and keep them perfect and pristine. Even if I look out and get an unopened bottle, I'm cutting the cord on it and I'm wearing it because to me they're to be enjoyed. And part of the enjoyment for me is the sense, the smell and enjoying them and wearing them and being surrounded by the smell of them. So I do wear them. But yeah, that's my collection. That's my collection philosophy and how I collect and what I collect and why I collect. And I'll go more in depth on my collection at a later date. So that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this and upload it because I want to do a review of a fragrance, but then I also want to do kind of a rant, and I will get to the rant next, I think. So let me stop this and upload this, and I'll catch you guys later.